morning, everyone. A wonderful Sunday morning to all of you joining us here at K-Fair for Covestro's Arena, and good morning to you joining us online through our various channels on LinkedIn, YouTube, etc. We're so happy to have you because today we will talk about circular design. We'll have brilliant designers here on stage, and we'll start off with one that is really internationally famous. He's very passionate, and when I read about him, I thought, well, a lot has changed, right? When I learned how to drive a little more than 30 years ago, driving was like operating cars, was very one-directional. You had a gear lever, you know, you just had pushed all these buttons and do things. Well, you never got a feedback from the car. I mean, it worked or it didn't. But today, a lot of things changed. The human-machine interface is bidirectional now. So we get feedback, we do things, and it responds to our touch or even getting close. So all the interfaces, and we have a great example there when we talk about the interior of the car, they change a lot. So now let's hear from the founder of Northern Works Design in Finland, and he will tell us all about his designer's perspective when it comes to new materials and new interior design in the automotive industry. So please give him a big round of applause. Here is Miika Heikkinen from Northern Works Design.
Perfect.
Miika.
Thank you.
So good to have you. Stage is yours.
Thanks. Good morning, everyone. Oh, it's the morning still.
Yes.
Cool. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the design story behind the K2022 interior demonstrator. And to start off with, let's see if this works. It works perfect. So we're going to talk about the interior. We're going to talk a little bit about the backstory behind, and hopefully there's some questions afterwards, and we can even look at it at the demo booth as well. And actually, I can't see the slides, so there's maybe a little bit of a mismatch here. So I'm going to have to look back every now and then, so bear with me. So starting off with Northern Works, we're based in Finland. We're a small studio, but we have a wide branch of collaborators globally. We work internationally, so we've got a couple of clients in Finland as well, but most of the clients are global. So we work to US, Asia, and Europe. And we've been working for about 10 years. And what we do is we do a lot of concept design, so something we've been doing with Covestro as well, nearly 10 years now. We do industrial design, and our core is transportation design. So we do aviation, marine design, product design, and we also do a little bit of strategy as well. So hopefully everything in the interior you can see is sort of binding the thoughts we've learned in the past 10 years as well. A couple of the clients we worked with in the past, and just seeing that we're seeing the same thing. Yeah, perfect. So you might recognize, especially the company on the top left. Obviously, we worked with Covestro, Tactotec, and some of the suppliers you'll see here as well. But we work with the bigger companies as well. And this makes it really interesting because we have to understand the needs from a bigger scale to a smaller scale. So sometimes we're just presenting a new technology in the best possible way so that people can actually understand how it could be utilized. And sometimes we're actually doing the final design, which will be operated by the final end consumer as well. A couple of examples, just before we get into the Covestro stuff. Some of you might have noticed the steering wheel on the top right. We did this with a couple of companies from Finland. And the idea was to completely revolutionize the way a steering wheel is operated. A little bit what we're seeing with the interior as well. So the idea was that we're seeing this shift from analog to digital, and then from digital back to more emotional analog. And the idea here was that with the steering wheel nowadays, you can operate most of the car interior, and but you, instead of using all the switch buttons, you want to be able to adapt it to your own personal needs. So only have the information you need at one time. Some of the examples as well, we do a lot for the boats and car industry as well. And if we look at some of these demonstrators, so we were working on the K19 demo, and actually I think the first demos we did were already in 2013, 16 as well, so quite a while back. But now to the actual topic. So the K22 interior. So the starting point was that what if we could really design a sort of a truly adaptable modular part? And it all started with a single part. So we had this discussion with Siro that could we do something that could be utilized around the vehicle in different places with different use cases, so that the actual customers wouldn't even realize that it's the same part. So effectively, it would sort of work almost like a Lego piece. So if you're doing a premium car, you could have a different kind of finish on it. If you're doing a more of an entry-level car, you could have a different finish. If you want a user interface on it, you could do it differently. If you want it for lighting, you could do it differently. You could link them. And the whole idea was that by doing this, we would get to the whole core of the concept of being sustainable and reducing. So the idea of reduce, reuse, recycle, and in this way also reducing the amount of parts that you need for a single vehicle. When we started designing the actual part, so we're still talking about a single part, and actually the iframe, or the friendly name for it, is the hockey stick. So the hockey stick was the starting point of the whole design. So instead of starting with the big concept, we started with the small part. So there's a couple of trends that are really big at the moment in the automotive industry is using genuine materials. So you might see a lot of the companies going away from chrome, going away from sort of these very superficial feeling materials, going into genuine parts, and also this way reducing the amount of emissions as well. There's things like stone, there's actual cork being used in cars as well. People are trying to get marble into the cars as well. So it really depends on what the car is being used for, what the genuine material is. And also things like metal are coming back, but instead of using chrome parts, you're actually trying to put things that feel and look more like real materials. And this is something we're seeing with interior decoration as well. With the forms, and again, this part is not very, it's not really sculpted, but the whole idea was that the shape would enable us to do multiple shapes and complex designs. But with forms as well, we're seeing a sort of a very polarized scene with the cars. So some of the cars are getting very emotional. We're seeing more sort of rapid prototyping. We're seeing more complex forms in the interiors. But at the same time, we're seeing this very precise minimalism where you go from soft to hard and very detailed, precise, detailed, what do you call them? Details, yeah. Yeah. And then also something which is big as well is translucency. The thing with translucency as well is that we're going to a stage where there's so much information surrounding us. With the cars, we have so much switches. The phone is constantly going off. We're seeing advertisements. So the part where translucency is interesting is that you're able to either turn things off and turn them on. So for example, you can have interfaces that are visible when you switch them on. You can switch it off and then suddenly it's just a simple panel. Or then you can have lighting as well. So translucency is actually something that we're seeing more and more in different fields of design. And obviously, we shouldn't forget, does this work? Light, yeah. So translucency and light go hand in hand. And with lighting as well, it's not just about having simple white light, light on, light off. At the moment, we're seeing more of the sort of different emotional lighting. And at the same time, the parts sort of, even if they're quite simple, with the lighting and this translucency, you can actually create a lot of emotion into it. So when we started actually sketching this, we really didn't know what to do in the beginning, because we said, okay, it needs to be multi-use, it needs to be something that morphs, and you can use it in multiple places. So we started looking at designs where the idea was that we create these beautiful sculptural shapes that interlock, and in a way you could use them in the dash, you could use them in the center console. And we're looking at the trends where you could see these sort of beautiful soft surfaces creating creases and then spinning around. And basically we had all the options in the world. But effectively, what we ended up doing was this quite a simplistic shape. And the idea was that if we have this form that has this thinner strip, and then it gets thicker, it means that we can, first of all, we can create sort of movement within the part, but then we can also utilize the bigger area for example, an interface, or it could be a door handle, or it could have more of a mechanical use. And then we started experimenting as well that, okay, if we're using a shape which is, we call it the hockey stick, but the iframe, that what should be dynamic in a way that is leaning forward or more static. And eventually we came up with this idea that what if it was a cutout of a perfect cylindrical form? The idea was that if the form is cylindrical, it means that you can combine the parts together. So you could almost create pure surfaces without people understanding that actually we're using the same part over and over and over again. And just by changing the way it's finished on top with the genuine material, or whether it's left clean for the translucency and lighting, you could really change the way it's being used. Then we get into the design phase, and I think we're sort of 10 minutes in, so finally we get to design. So the first thing we did was just try the overall design in various places. So we were using this more like a graphical element. So the idea was that if we have these interlocking shapes on the dash, you could maybe move them and create a screen in between, or we could use it on the center tunnel, or we could use it on the door. But what we quickly realized was that this was too superficial of a way to start. So we thought that if we take this to the next level and we look at the sort of the initial starting point of these forms and these interlocking shapes, we should use the panel more as an extrusion form, because this is something we could actually build. So the whole idea was that if this eye panel is sort of defining the way the interior has been designed, it should also define the way it's been shaped. So we started experimenting with these extrusion shapes that sort of start building around from the driver's spot. So you can imagine that you got these two wings here that start extruding the center console, the dash, and the door. So everything sort of started building out more clearly from the actual eye panel, and this is where we started getting more of interesting, more relevant designs as well. And we have a short video here to show a little bit about the design and the design process as well that we could look at next. So basically the final design has been exhibit about 20 meters this way. And for the actual final design that we used for the physical property, for the CMF, we decided to go with something which is quite sort of easy to understand. You could see a little bit of a glimpse on the video of the different CMFs we did as well, but we wanted to do something where it wouldn't be too polarizing. And the overall design was, again, like mentioned before, designed around these I-frames being extruded, but with the CMF choices that we wanted to really highlight the eye panels. So we ended up using this wood veneer finish, and we got these indirect lightings that you can see when you visit the demo as well. Just very quickly, a couple of the details as well. Around the vehicle, if you go and see it live as well, there's a couple of very clever, intelligent details. When you first see it, it might look just like a sculptural interior, but when you sit there, when you look at the panels, you realize that there's a lot of communication that's actually hidden under the skin. There's the UI that appears through the wood. There's the lighting that appears from the panel that you can't see. We've got the very thin seats. We got actually even the leather material is not leather, it's the in-skin. So in a way, the whole concept is quite clever, and we try to sort of be, let's say, very responsible with it. There's also the board next to it, or the screen where you can see the different CMF variations. And this was something that we wanted to highlight as well, is that the sort of the panel, to be successful, to do what it needed to do, it needed to be versatile in a way that it, with different finishes, in different interior, with different trends, it could still adapt like the chameleon in the very beginning. So you can see it works with the more like the pop kind of version on the bottom left. It works with the upcycle one, where the idea was that what if we just used corked and recycled materials. And it also works with the more dark luxurious version where you're using darker marble and more premium materials, real metals. So in a nutshell, yeah, that's the sort of the story, and hopefully there's some questions about anything. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Piero. Ciro, come with me on stage.
Yeah.
Thank you, Miika, and I want to introduce you to Ciro Piermatteo. He's the Covestro side, the Covestro partner. And now, let me just, before we open it up to the audience, ask you quickly, what did you learn from designers like Miika when it comes to how they view the materials and the interior of the car, because they have a completely different perspective. You know, you as a material designer, you come from the material side. What did you learn from him?
Yeah, we were very good inspired by Miika. We are working together since a couple of years, and we always learn how, from the design point of view, the change is coming in the automotive interior. So we, as a material producer, we need inspiration to catch and match the first and the next trends in the automotive. So, and Miika helps a lot to understand and to transform these trends in visual part, yeah? Because we always have the idea, okay, how we can really put our material that are absolutely fantastic in terms of mechanical property, in terms of all the other characteristics, but we don't know about design. So we need somebody that help us to give more and more, say, inspiration in this way. Yeah.
So was there any point where, you know, well, Miika, the designers thought, well, I mean, we want to do this or we want to do that, lightweight, durable, flexible, all these things, and you said, well, let me think about it if we can actually do that?
Yes, there was a lot of discussion at the beginning how we can really realize these trends. But I must say, at the end, we adapt our material. We create also new material. For this, when Miika talk about light, we realize new material that are able really to transmit light also behind genuine material. This was one of the discussion. We want to put genuine material in the car, but how we can transmit light through this genuine material. And that was our challenge internally, and we did. At the end, we have developed a new material for this, and this was also thanks to the inspiration coming from Miika.
And when we talk about circular materials, you know, circular design, it also means that we have to think about first using less and lighter materials, right? So put fewer resources into it. But then again, also the life cycle of the material, right? To make it, you know, think about recycling, using monomers, or, you know, how did that play a role into your sort of development, the whole process of designing this interior?
Yeah, there was one of the topics that we want to present also in the automotive interior concept. That means all the material that you see here physically are coming from recycled, sources. Yeah? From monomers, they are coming from resources that are even recycled.
So they're not virgin materials?
Yes, no, there are virgin, but also not virgin material, or virgin coming from recycled monomers. Yeah? This is the cool story, that we can really create slim parts. They reduce a lot of the space and reduce a lot of the weight of the car, using also chemical recycled material. This is the full message that we want to bring to the market.
It's interesting because that sort of brings with it a new definition of a virgin material, because if you could chemically recycle it and end up with a clean raw material.
Virgin is virgin because the characteristics of the material are even the same as a standard material, but they are coming from recycled sources.
It's beautiful. All right, so at this point I want to open it up to the audience, and we have this gentleman in the back who wants to ask a question. Yes.
Awesome, really cool. So the design inspiration, obviously, Miika, thank you. But I'm a materials guy, and when I hear natural materials, I'm thinking, why aren't we seeing them already? There must be some challenges involved. So can you two gentlemen tell us perhaps some of the challenges that are involved with trying to put natural materials into vehicle interiors?
Thanks, John, for the question. Natural material or genuine material are even used in a car for a long time. If you think on wood was, or roots, they are used for many years in the car. But the cool thing is now combine the genuine material with light and with function. This was never experienced in the past. Now we really realize the car industry this kind of combination of function. Yeah, you will see a natural material, and as a feeling is a beautiful, absolutely nice experience to touch this part. But you will have also feedback, light, function. This is what we would like to push in the automotive industry.
And there's also been a small shift from the clients and the users as well. So in a way, when you're using genuine materials, especially if you're using wood, there's going to be things like patina, or it might be that it's not absolutely perfect. But something that is actually becoming a bit of a trend as well is having things where you can actually see that it's not brand new and it's been used as well. So if you use it in clever places, you don't want your seat to look like it's got patina. But if you got nice wooden panels and it sort of patinates in a nice way, and you got a contrasting, for example, metal sort of frame on it that might have a few scratches, but it still stays nice and clean. So it's sort of, people are more accepting the fact that the parts, they age with you as well. And in that way, I think it's being more accepted as well.
All right. Do we have any more questions from the audience or from you watching us online? Please keep them coming. We have had great questions yesterday. So if you want to ask a question, this is the time. Now, let me ask you, Miika, I mean, you showed us how certain things are just new developments, like translucency. Light obviously plays an important role. We see a lot of ambient lights now in cars. What I'm wondering is, these are flat surfaces. So for me as a user, from a user perspective, I like haptic feedback. We're used to buttons, we're pushing them, pressing them down. Is that also something that you are working with, that's sort of coming if technology enables you to do so?
Yeah. Yeah, it's actually interesting that there's a bit of a shift in the industry at the moment, whether you look at cars or boats or even sort of consumer electronics, where we've gone from analog switches where you might have had rotational knobs or push buttons, then you went all digital, so suddenly you were just sort of replicating the sort of analog life into a digital screen. And now we're sort of taking this digital user interface and we're putting it on sort of mechanical analog surfaces. And the next shift will be getting more haptics in. So whether the material will actually, like obviously at the moment we're already illuminating while you press, or you might get a little vibration. But whether the material will actually morph, whether it will change tone, whether there will be different kind of actual, let's say, sensational feedback. So that's something that's coming in a lot, because we all know that if you're driving, for example, a Tesla on a rocky road, that's going all over the shop, and you're trying to hit the touchscreen while you're driving and your kids are yelling at the back, it's a pretty tricky job. But on a nice parked place, it's awesome to use a touchscreen. And that's something that we're seeing more and more, that people are actually looking for physical connection. And this is where it gets a little bit tricky, because at the same time, there's another trend, which is personalization. So if we compare our mobile phones, the interface and the amount of apps we have is very different. And the way we use them is very different. And this is something that the clients are also expecting, that when I sit into the car, I want the car to feel like it's mine. And this is going to be a bigger thing as well when you look at shared mobility. So the autonomous driving and the fact that we're not going to be owning the cars for a very long, in a few years' time, hardly any of us are going to be owning our cars. So then it's even more important that the whole environment adapts to your needs.
It's interesting because in the past we always had to adapt to the environment. Car was static, but we come in different sizes. We have different arm lengths. So maybe then in the future the button could come to me, depending on where my hand is, and then I could press it. So are you actually actively working on that?
Yes, we are working on this, because if you see the last concept of also simple car, we can say they want to give you your own experience with your iPhone, for example, that you can put in the car, and everything displays. Big displays are the same displaying what you are on your iPhone, for example. This is very important because, as Miika explained also before, the people, they don't want to have an unexperienced car. They want to have an environment where they feel good. And they feel good when they have all the information from their own. So this is something we are working on, specific in display area, where we can really realize a large display wrap around the interior. And this is feasible with a material like polycarbonate, because it's really design freedom, giving design freedom to the designer to create 3D shape of display, for example.
What I want to touch on is, well, first let me ask the audience, do we have a question now? Anyone? Because I can keep asking questions all day long. Oh, yes, we do. No, you just wanted to say hello?
Hello.
All right. That's fine, too. What I want to touch on is the circularity aspect. Yes, technology is great, and it's awesome to have new features and new interiors that makes it feel good and want to touch these surfaces. but we also want, to close the loop, right? So, for you as a designer, how important is that aspect when you, think about life cycles? That you want to work with materials that then in the end can be brought back and put into a different car in a different shape, maybe.
Yeah, I think it's really important, and it's more and more important. And what we're doing actually on a lot of the design concepts as well is that we're questioning whether we should actually implement this in. There's a lot of times we get a brief where, we worked with West Coast Customs a couple of years back, and that was insane because they wanted to put screens and stuff everywhere that we didn't want to do.
For the bikes?
Yes. And basically the thing as a designer nowadays is that we need to be more and more critical in terms of what we're adding in. And when we're adding in something, we also need to think about the next loop and the next step. So whether it can be actually refurbished or updated and put back, or whether it can get, what happens to the panel or the parts afterwards. So it's becoming more and more important that we're not just baking stuff in and creating this sort of ecological catastrophe in a way.
Yes, because that's a new design thinking, right? In the past we've seen upcycling in cars, or just reusing certain things or repurposing them. But now we actually, from the design phase onward, we want to really think how this circle will go.
Yeah, and there was actually an interesting concept. I don't know how many have seen the Citroen Oli concept, and that was really interesting. And in a way, even the way it's been communicated, that the panels are interchangeable, easy to use, easy to maintain, update, and they've reduced so much of unnecessary stuff away. So I think that's sort of encapsulating a lot of the sort of thinking that the industry is looking into now and should be looking into more and more. So yeah, there's a lot of very positive things happening.
So how important is it then? Because we talk a lot about collaborations and crafting connections. For Covestro as a company, we always think about the technical aspects, and I get that, but how important is it for you to have these connections with designers that sometimes maybe also push you in a certain direction and trigger new ideas?
So we learned that we need to change our language, to interact with designer, because we always have a good relationship with all the technical engineer inside a company, for example. But we learned that we must change completely our way to interact with this industry, starting from the designer, because they are inspiring the industry and they need also the information about our material, because sometimes all the characteristic of such a material is not well known in the design community. So we need this kind of interaction, and we explore this through the CMF topics also, because color, material, finishing will help also the designer to understand our material and will give us the possibility to really realize completely new effect in the car. And this is the key actually in this industry.
So it's a fruitful relationship for both partners.
Yes,
so tell me, Miika, what's next? What are the next steps? And now we've seen the interior. You're done with that. Can you share a little bit of what you're working on?
Oh, tricky.
Just in general, what are we going to see in terms of surfaces or new materials? Or
I think there's going to be more and more sort of, let's say, intelligent elements coming in unexpected areas.
You're very careful.
Yeah, I can't. This is the impossible thing with cars. As you might have seen with some of the examples on what we've done, is that we can't really say anything.
You should talk about
it. But I'd say, there's a lot more sort of intelligence coming into the cars. You go back a few years and everything was sort of a lot about bling bling chrome and big things, and now everyone sort of realized that enough of that. It's more about sort of creating this intelligent environments, and that's what we're getting from different fields as well.
Yeah, you have the introduction of AI into the car, and then so it's no longer going to be static, but maybe changing, and like you said, personalization is probably a big trend.
Yeah, and also the fact that we're finally starting to go from, for example, level 3 autonomy to 4 and 5, which means that the cars might be actually running 24/7. Currently, the percentage of cars being used is 4, so 96% of the time they're being static. So if the car is moving all the time and it has constantly different people inside, obviously it needs to be more intelligent, it needs to be more durable, and at the same time, it's sort of, you're not expecting a car like that to last for 10 years either. So that's where the real materials and the patina comes in, because if you don't expect it to last 30 years, then suddenly it's a different game. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff coming in, and hopefully one day at a K Fair we can talk more about those as well.
So let's make sure we invite him back for the next K, and then maybe he can share some more.
It was 2025.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So, Miika, thank you so much. Shira, thank you for sharing the Covestro side. Thank you for joining us. And if you want to ask these guys, maybe I'll stay for another few minutes.
Yeah.
So you can maybe also ask a one-on-one question if you're too shy to ask it in the audience here. All right.
It's one question.
You have one more question? Okay. We have less than a minute left, but quick question.
When we recycle the material, the recycled material quality is not as good as virgin.
Yeah.
It is near virgin.
Yeah.
So is there any possibility in future for some standardization that where the recycled material can be used for which application, non-critical application, so some standard, global standard or international standard, so that recycled material will be fixed and said this can be used here without any problem or whatsoever. So is there any standardization possible in future? Because now recycled material we get various quality. We are confused which to be used for which application and where we should sell, to whom we should sell. So I'm sure recycling will be it should be done in a more and more way so that.
Yes, I mean, you probably missed the beginning of the talk. We already covered this, but maybe, Thierry, you want to repeat that?
Yeah, quickly, we just talked about this before, but anyway, we are believing as Covestro, we are following a trend, a strategy to deliver virgin material coming from chemical recycled monomers. So that means when you buy our recycled material, we call recycle RE or CQ, these materials have the same properties as the standard material, but coming from resources that are already recycled. Yeah, that means you don't need to basically think about, because it's already reducing the CO2 footprint. So then, of course, later on you can even mechanically recycle this material and introduce in the cycle. Yeah, but anyway, the first step will be to buy a material that is coming from recycled monomer. Yeah, chemical recycle. This is the story, and especially for the automotive industry, is quite important because you need the properties of the material. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Shira. And thank you guys for watching and for joining. And let's keep closing the loop. Thank you for coming.
Thanks.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And at 1 p.m., I just want to let you know, we have designer Chris Lefteri here. So don't miss that. If you don't, have a quick lunch, and then at 1 p.m., we'll continue the discussion about design.